of seeing familiar faces. Jessica Smith. I am currently the Corporate Vice President, Chief Regulatory Officer, and Head of Global Quality at a company called Integra Life Sciences based out of Princeton, New Jersey. I started there about 2.5 years ago. My background is all engineering, so I think we'll get into why I ended up where I am. And so that's where I am now. I am still based out of Salt Lake City, been here for a very long time. Went to the University of Utah too many times to count. And with that, I'll turn it over to Veronica.
Thank you, Jessica. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Veronica Kingston. I'm a global quality leader. I've worked with some of the major med device companies, Boston Scientific, Stryker, and Medtronic. And I started with Boston Scientific 25 plus years ago in Ireland in a startup plant. And they brought me here to Salt Lake City. And that was 13 years ago. I came for 2 years, and I'm still here. So eventually one day I'll find my way back probably. But so I recently left Medtronic and started up my own consultancy. And my experience really is mainly in manufacturing quality. So over to you.
Great. Hello, everybody. My name is John Knorpp, and I really am just thrilled that you all didn't leave. And you're willing to stay here and learn a little bit about a career in regulatory and quality. So thanks for sticking around and making us feel good. I am currently the head of regulatory affairs for Merit Medical here located in South Jordan. Been with the company for 14 years. Before that, I was with Bard before they were BD. And I've been in quality and in regulatory and look forward to sharing some of my experiences with you.
And I'm Ann Bracken again, and apart from being an adjunct professor, I'm also a compliance specialist, quality compliance, at Teva Pharmaceuticals. Prior to that, I was a principal scientist doing method development and validation and computer system qualifications. They called me back and asked me to please move up to the compliance department because I frequently got involved with the FDA audits for all the data integrity issues.
Thank you all. All right, as an introduction to this panel, I want to make sure that everyone understands we hope for this to be very interactive. So I have a number of questions that I've prepared, and we are ready to move forward with that. But as you feel inclined, please do let me know, and we'll get your questions going. We'd like to have that kind of be an open invitation throughout the remainder of this session. So I do have, as we continue, I do have a microphone here. It is currently off. There is a button here at the bottom that you need to slide to turn it on. I'm going to put it right here. So, as you get questions, as you want to probe a little bit deeper, please do, and I'll make sure that we get time for that. But I do have some prepared questions, so panelists, we're going to go ahead and get started. I have a question first. Jessica, this will be for you, and John, for you as well. Question is, can you share a pivotal moment in your career that significantly impacted your growth? And then on top of that, what lessons did you learn from that experience? Jessica, why don't you take it first?
Yeah, there's lots. There's a couple. I was consulting actually for a long time, and I had an opportunity. There was kind of a crossroads between consulting and going to work for a company full-time. It was the company I was actually doing most of my consulting for. And, it's kind of a scary time to figure out, because consulting was going well. I was very busy. But you kind of have to, it's a totally different mindset when you go to work for a company. Interesting part of it was, as a consultant at a company, you're not treated differently, but you kind of are. You're kind of the stepchild, right? You're not really brought into the fold. So I ended up taking that leap, and all of a sudden, all the people that I wasn't really brought into the fold were now reporting to me. And so it was one of those things where a lot of people would ask, what are you going to do when all these people that, weren't really including you now are going to report to you? How are you going to handle that sort of thing? And I think one of the things I did was I really just thought, this is a non-issue, right? I'm going to do my job, and I'm going to do it well. And then if they follow me, I know I have done my job well. And so when I took that approach, it really kind of set the stage for further growth and further opportunities within the company. And so I think that what I learned from that was, there's a lot of noise that happens in your career, and there's a lot of kind of emotional things that really don't matter, right? If you're focused on doing your job and doing it well, people will follow you, and people will learn from you, and people will want to be on your team. And so I think that was a really pivotal moment that I use now in many situations when those sorts of things come up, is I really just focus on doing my job and doing it well, and the rest of it kind of just falls to the side, right? It just goes away all on its own.
So, where do you start? There's lots of opportunities, lots of experiences like that, right? So for me, probably like many of you, I had started my career and had multiple promotions and had been really successful as an individual contributor, and eventually got promoted to management, which, that's what happens. You're great at what you do, so you become a manager, whether you're good at leading people or not. And then they give you this handbook and teaches you all about being a leader. No, they don't do that either. So you have to figure it out on your own. And so I had an experience. I was a few years into my leadership career and thinking I'm doing great, and I'm kind of viewing it as, well, I'm just a bigger individual contributor. And so I was kind of viewing my role subconsciously in that way. And I had a leader, my leader, come to me and give me some really tough feedback. And at that point in my career, I had been moving and promoting every few years, and I was pretty confident in who I was and what I was doing. But then I got this feedback from her that kind of gave me a real sanity check on what it means to be a leader and what I needed to do as a leader and what she expected of me. And I'll admit, the first time when that happened, I sat in her office, listened begrudgingly, thinking, who is she? What does she know about me? She's only been with the company for a year. She has no clue who I am. And I walked out of there really upset. And I thought about it for a couple of days, and I realized, you know what? She was right on a number of counts. Now, there were some things that I would still take issue with, but for the most part, she gave me the kind of feedback I needed to hear, and that turned me in a better direction as a leader. I'm not a perfect leader by any stretch of the imagination, but that was a pivotal moment for me in my career as a leader, and which to me highlighted the importance of having a mentor, a manager, a friend, somebody or a professional coach that will help you in your career journey, especially as you transition from being an individual contributor to being a leader. It's very different, and you need to think differently, you need to ask different questions, you need to expect different things of yourself as a leader.
Thank you both. I have another question this time for Veronica and Anne. Question is, what is one of your biggest career successes? Veronica, why don't you start?
Okay. So I would say, again, I want to say there was many, but the most impactful one for me, I think, is when I first moved over here to Salt Lake City. I moved to Boston Scientific, and it was my first site leader of quality role. And the site I had, it's no longer there. Well, it's become a bigger site, I guess, in a different building. But the site that I moved to would have been quite I would say, traditional site. Few new products, if any, for many, many years. The team that were there had been there a long time. Not very forward-thinking. And I went in there, and I had come from a place of a lot of forward thinking because it was a startup company. It was very innovative, and you know, it was really proving itself to the larger corporation. So when I moved to this plant, it was a little bit of a shock to the system. Not only culturally moving, but the plant itself was different. And over the next few years, I worked very closely with the leadership team there. We moved people around to roles that are more suited to them. We drove a culture that was more innovative. And the quality function had a big influence on that. And part of my leadership, I guess, there was to drive that forward thinking within the team and to get the right players in there that they were able to influence others as well on the manufacturing floor. To the point that 2 to 3 years later, we had a whole different reputation in the corporation. And to the point that it led to a new building being built in Salt Lake City. We brought in business from California, and we grew into quite a big Stryker manufacturing plant. So I guess the success for me, from a philosophical perspective, is never underestimate what the QA group can do to change the reputation of a plant. And it's not just the external environment, it's the corporate you work in. You need to look attractive to the corporation in order to bring new business in as well. And the QA group has a big role to play in that.
Okay. I would say for me, I was working just as a chemist in the laboratory, but I found that I had an aptitude for the standalone software systems. And I could understand how they worked, and they were slowly being made an administrator of all the systems. We had about 22 different standalone systems, and I became administrator on all of them. And then, of course, the FDA came in and goes, you can't collect data and administer software. That's just a no-no. And so they came and said, okay, we're going to create a new role just for you, and you're going to be our administrator for our company, for our laboratory. And that probably was the beginning of the success, because that also put me into working with the compliance groups and the quality groups to make sure that all of our systems, we had to go through all of our systems, and I remediated all of them to make sure we were up to GAMP5 and the ISO requirements and everything else. And so my interaction with all of the quality group, the compliance group, the laboratory people, put me in a position that when other things were happening, the head of compliance came and tapped me and said, hey, would you come work for us? My boss's boss did not like that. He was like, no, you need to stay here. And so that led to promotions, you know, to make me stay where I was at, until that department is no longer. And then the compliance group said, okay, you're mine now.
Awesome. Any audience questions real quick? I see you grabbed the mic, but.
Yeah, my name is Dan Peterson. I work for Network Partners Group, but I've been in industry for almost 10 years now, and I find that being in industry that long, you know where to find all the information. You know the basics. You can navigate just about anything, and I'll be honest, it becomes a little stagnant. And so I'm curious to know how you keep the fire, keep the interest in moving forward. Is it career progression that you pursued, or diversification of portfolio of products, stuff like that? And anyone can take that.
I'll start. This will be hopefully relatively quick. I mean, that's an interesting question because I don't think I've ever felt exactly that. But I will say I did take a leap of faith at one point in my career. I was here in Salt Lake, and I moved to San Diego to take a totally different job when BD acquired Bard. And the reason I did it was not because I felt stagnant, but I felt like if I don't try something different, I'm probably never going to. It's, you know, you're going to get too comfortable. And so I wanted to challenge myself and see if I could do something different. Not to tell you to leave your job, which but maybe there's another opportunity within Network Partners, because they do a lot. We use you guys all the time. It's a great company, and you guys do a whole lot of different things. And, cross-training in other areas is, one of the best things you can do, even if it feels really uncomfortable.
I'll say one of the things that I love and hate about regulatory affairs is that it is always changing, right? And so I started my career in quality assurance, and after a while, I felt like I was doing the same thing over and over again. The framework of quality assurance wasn't changing. I was just fighting more fires. And there's nothing against that. That's great. It just wasn't my cup of tea. And I looked at regulatory, and I saw a different opportunity there where regulation was changing. It was dynamic. And that's really what keeps me engaged in my career, among other things, but it's constantly changing. We're constantly have to learn new things, new regulations, new countries that come online with regulations. MDR is like almost a 4-letter word. It's been really tough for a lot of people. We've had to learn a ton with MDR, but it's been really, I don't want to say it was an exciting journey, but it was challenging in a way that was motivating and engaging. So for me, it's the dynamic changing of the field that keeps it interesting.
Let me ask another question here, and then we'll get to the audience again. This one, John, I'm going to ask you first, and then Anne as well. Have you encountered any significant setbacks? And then how did the setbacks impact your overall success? I think, John, you kind of shared one of those challenges already, but maybe there's something else you could dig up.
Well, maybe this isn't as significant a setback. The one I shared, well, let me talk about the one that I shared. So that did feel like a setback because I felt like I had a boss now who I felt like she didn't believe in me and what I could accomplish. And once I kind of realized there was some value in her feedback, that took a lot of humility to realize this person is giving me feedback I need to pay attention to. And anytime you experience a challenge or a setback in your career, you got to humble yourself and think, what do I need to learn from this? Right? That's key to any setback, any challenge in your career. There is a lesson there that's going to make you stronger, that's going to make you a better professional as you continue through your career. In this case, I kind of said to myself, you know what? I'm going to take that, but I'm also going to prove her wrong on the things that I felt like she was incorrectly critical. And I had an opportunity to take on a project that was very high profile at the company, and I threw everything I had into that, and it was successful. And she was very congratulatory for me on accomplishing it, what it contributed. So I think you can take any setback and turn it into a positive, and ultimately that helped propel me into my next career move.
I would say the biggest setback came last year when my company announced that they were laying off our entire R&D section, 110 people. I was going to be one of them. But they said to me, but we're going to let you take any training you want. And so I was like, okay, great. So I went and got my green belt, my Lean Six Sigma green belt. Then I got my black belt. Then I got my rack for drugs. Then I got my CMQOE. And I did all this all in the time before they shuttered the doors. And so for me, that setback was, okay, I'm going to go and get all the certifications I need to progress my career forward. And so when the opening came up in the compliance, even I had been laid off, I was the person HR reached out to and said, hey, we're having trouble in compliance, would you please come back?
Yeah, thank you. Sarah?
Thank you for being here today. Thinking about career paths, where you've been, what you've learned, as someone who's new in defining my career journey and where I want to go within regulatory, what key aspects do you feel like, or projects you feel like you learned, or maybe what side quests, for lack of better words, did you feel like gave you really good experience in your career journey within regulatory, even though they might not have been applicable?
I've got one that, and this is kind of one that really, I would say, was a key moment in moving my career trajectory. I don't know where you work, but if you can find an assignment that is within regulatory, but maybe has a broader impact. So, you know, the example that I had was we were invited to our corporate headquarters, and they had like these pet projects they wanted to implement for the company. And I had no idea what they were. And literally, I was like 5 days in my job. And, you know, there's part of me going, don't do it, don't do it. And there's another part of me going, you gotta do it, you gotta do it. You know, I raised my hand, and then I'm thinking, oh crap, how am I gonna do this? I have no idea. But over the next couple of years, we implemented a RIMS. It was a homegrown. It wasn't a RIM system. It was an automated notification of change system, with Chris knows well. But it was implemented across the whole company. But what it did is it gave me exposure to the complete life cycle of how we make products. It gave me exposure to people in the C-suite. It gave me exposure to budgets and business cases and all these things that if I had just stayed and not raised my hand, wouldn't have done that. And from that point, then now all the people knew me, more opportunities. And so I would say if you can find those types of opportunities that stretch you outside of just regulatory, I would say take them.
And I would add to that, depending on what your role is, at Merit, our specialists that support the local R&D teams, so they do all the regulatory for the US, Europe, and Canada. But they also interface with our international regulatory team around the globe. And by virtue of that interaction, they develop a completely different view of the company, the strategy of the company, and how local decisions have a global impact. And so, but there's probably very few people in your company that have that view. They just don't have that exposure, right? They're working on a process locally, they're working on a new product development, or they're marketing just to the US because that's their focus. They don't have a global perspective. And so with that global perspective, you're in a really unique place to make a difference in some of the things that Jessica was mentioning with other projects, other areas that may not be in the core RA/QA wheelhouse. But because you see things differently, you can add insight, you can add knowledge and experience that will help inform these other areas. I'll give you an example. In our company, launching products internationally is a huge challenge for lots of reasons I won't get into, and probably I see lots of heads nodding, so I probably were not alone. And I was able to work with our head of marketing and say, let's put together a cross-functional team and let's look at how we launch products. Let's look at how we do this globally, not just in the US, and be a real global company. And so she and I together were able to get this effort going. It's still going, and we've made a lot of incremental improvements and changes in how we launch products. But it all came from that exposure that I had seeing the world from a different perspective. So I would never, don't undervalue the knowledge and what you have in your role as a regulatory quality professional. Use that to your advantage to take on new assignments and new opportunities that you can be of more value to the company than just delivering submissions and strategies for those submissions.
And I think I would add to that, reach out to the people in other departments. Find out why are they struggling? Where do they need help to meet the regulatory requirements? Because they also are going to have their narrow view. They have the blinders on for what they need to do in their department. And so being able to inform them what you're going to need from a regulatory or compliance standpoint will help bring them around, and so that you can actually work together as a more cohesive unit.
All right, I'm going to seed another question in here. Veronica and Jessica, this will be for both of you. What are some skills that you've built that have been crucial to your success? And on top of that, what skills do you believe are essential for the next generation of regulatory and quality leaders?
Okay. So for me, I think it's the development of the soft skills are probably maybe the more difficult and the most essential, especially from a leadership perspective, but even as an individual contributor. When you're in a manufacturing quality, your world is the entire manufacturing plant, and your job is to influence that plant to be the best they can be from a quality cultural perspective. So the soft skills like collaboration, influence, ability to listen, which, you know, many of us struggle with, including myself. You know, I get excited about an idea and I just want to tell people about it, but, you know, we got to calm ourselves down and just listen. And I think also critical thinking. You know, more and more I see that people just believe what they read and believe what they hear, whether it's social media, whether it's in a PowerPoint slide, whatever that is. But our job is to challenge the status quo. As a quality professional, we have to challenge things respectfully to drive that continuous improvement and seek better solutions. So, yeah, I think it's the soft skills. I think the hard skills, the knowledge we can learn, you know, you can read a book and learn the hard skills, but it's the soft skills you develop as your career develops. And if I look at myself, the younger me is very different than what I am today. I'm a much calmer person. I hope.
I think you pretty much stole my answer. But no, I was going to say emotional intelligence, which is, you know, kind of the buzzword right now. But seriously, I think for people that want to become managers, leaders, and that sort of thing, it's really easy to get caught up, especially when you're first a manager and you've got all these people to kind of want the authority and be a leader and let everybody, everybody needs to know that you're their boss and that sort of thing. And then over time you realize, like, you just want to hire great people that can lead for you, and you just kind of get to stand behind and kind of guide them softly in the right direction, and know when it's important to put your foot down in a nice collaborative way. Because once you've built, and the other piece of it is trust, right? The first thing for every team that I think is to get them to trust you. Not because you've done something, specific one day, but over time, it takes time. And if they trust you, you can all of a sudden, the door opens to be able to have direct conversations that maybe aren't comfortable for anybody, but they trust you and they know you're looking out for their best interests. So I think that's a really important one. And I would say for the future generation, long after I think I'm going to be in this industry, is AI, right? And understanding how it can help regulatory quality, the company, and how to use it not only for internal processes, but for how we do things externally too, for our devices and pharma even, I would say.
Any audience questions? All right.
Right here. My name is Brandon Kessler. I'm a quality manager for a small company called Xenocor. And I've recently come into the quality manager role, but I'm manager of a department of one myself. And one of my big difficulties in navigating this role is something that everybody on the panel has touched on already, but it's navigating being in the weeds, that individual contributor versus a strategic leader. I'm expected to help drive a quality and regulatory policy, and I find it very difficult because a lot of regulatory and quality work is in the weeds. It is preparing technical documentation, and I don't know how to switch back and forth in that way, or if that even is the right way to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult when you are the QA team, it sounds like. So, I mean, I suppose it's self-discipline as well. I'm sure there are probably leadership meetings that you attend, and maybe use those forums as an opportunity to kind of get into that strategic mindset. You do have to, if the company is planning on growing, which I'm sure it is, you have to start thinking about, okay, what is my future state organization looking like? And it's not going to grow from 1 to 20 overnight. It'll probably go from 1 to 2 and maybe 2 to 4. And that may take 12 months. but start thinking like that, even as you drive home from work. I mean, I do my best thinking when I'm driving in the car. What does my organization look like? What will it look like if the plant doubles in size, trebles in size, whatever? But it is a difficult situation to be in because you're all things to all people right now.
I would also add that maybe some horizon scanning would be good. And it sounds like, you know, for you, a one-man show, hope insubordination isn't a problem for you. Okay, you got that under control? Okay. But whatever time you can take to scan the horizon, meaning, you know, looking at what's out there, what's changing, and maybe it's not just in regulatory and quality. Maybe it's AI. Maybe it's ESG. But bringing some of those ideas back to the company, so the company starts to see you as, oh, he's not just our QA manager. He's bringing some great things to us that we need to be thinking about when we double in size, when we triple in size, or maybe right now that we hadn't thought about. So taking some time to scan the horizon will help you to come out of the weeds from time to time. There are reports out there published by McKinsey and Deloitte that have reports on the future of life sciences and even the future of regulatory in life sciences. That's a great place to go for some, I mean, they're looking, 10, 20 years out. That's a great place to do some horizon scanning.
All right, I have a question here again. Oh, we have one more. Let's go.
That's great.
All right. This will be for Anne and Veronica. What's the biggest change that you've dealt with in your career? And also, how did you manage it?
I would say going from the laboratory to being in a highly regulated computer area. But I dealt with it by educating myself. I had to go in and learn, even though I could run all the software systems, what are the regulatory requirements for controlling them and for qualifying them and for making sure we had data integrity and meeting so that when the FDA came in, they could look at our processes and say, yep, you're good. And so I would say the biggest thing you can do when you have a major change and shift in your career is to go and learn as much as you can. Reach out to other people who are also doing the same thing. So for me, I reached out to people, our IT department in Ireland. I reached out to the people who are doing the same job in Florida. It's like, okay, what are you doing? How are you doing this? And you bring in more of a global idea and rewrite procedures to make sure you're meeting the current requirements, because requirements can change when you're not looking. And so you go out there, research them, write up your SOPs, be willing to change on a dime if necessary, and be able to bring that to the other people who are stakeholders in what you're doing. For me, I had all of the managers or directors in the laboratory where every single one of them was impacted by my remediating the systems. No, you can't have that system today. And so you have to be able to work with those. And so developing those soft skills of working with the people and saying, I'm sorry, we're taking your equipment away from you for a week, and working with them to find out when is the best time to do that. How can I have the least impact and still meet the regulatory requirements was the biggest issue that we dealt with. And it worked out well if you go with a, I'm sorry, I know I'm going to impact you. How can we make it as little as possible?
Thank you. That was a very interesting answer. I was deep in thought. Yeah. So you know, I suppose I've changed roles probably every 3 years, even though I've really worked with four actually companies. It's important to keep changing your role, to keep growing and keep developing. I mean, we kind of all know that, I think, and realize that. But on a higher level, I think. You know, from a quality perspective, what has changed over the years is there's huge, and I'm really focusing on manufacturing now, manufacturing quality. There's always a lot of focus, and there's more now than years gone past, on cost reduction. So the role of the QA, your QA partner, us in other words, has changed actually. You know, I like to think that compliance is a given. It shouldn't be that extra getting ready for the inspector or the auditor or whatever. That should be a given. Now, it's not always the case, but generally it is. But it's that cost reduction. And, you know, year on year, we're asked for 5% reduction on costs. And what does the quality professional think or feel? And that has changed, because there was a time when we used to panic and say 5% reduction in costs is 5% less quality or worse quality or whatever. But that's not the case anymore. We're now we're getting more focused on continuous improvement, on automation, on inspection elimination. We're adding value more and more to the organizations in order to drive that cost improvement. So I would say from a higher level QA perspective, that is what has changed over the time. We used to be the gatekeepers, driving the compliance, getting ready for the audit, and that was our job. Our job is still that, but it's a lot more as well. And it's partnering with the other stakeholders in the manufacturing plant to drive that continuous improvement and cost reduction.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one more question, Jessica. This one's directed at you.
All right, let's do
You
it.
brought it up. Right?
Uh-oh.
How are you managing the changes we're experiencing with AI and regulatory or quality? Do you have any recommendations for our audience?
Yeah, so I only said I would answer that because I know very little, but I know a little. So one of the things that we get asked in our board meetings is, are you using AI? We actually have somebody on our board that works at Google. She's, you know, and so those are all of her questions, and we kind of look at her like, we still have paper copies. We can't even like get to the point of digitize. Can we just digitize our stuff first? But I will say that even in that scenario, you have opportunities to use AI. Sometimes you use it internally for your own documentation. So digitizing and then being able to use AI to find trends, to find outliers, to find data that you need. Now, it's kind of not the best use of AI, because AI does so much more than that, but it is a use of it. And for companies that really are starting at square one, there are uses. From a regulatory perspective, one of our teams started experimenting with a program called Nyquist AI. I don't know if anybody's heard of that. And they have found it to be incredibly helpful in doing predicate searches to find, to look into the MOD database and find trending on FDA or products that have the same pro codes. So just internally using it to just do kind of more strategy for regulatory, it's been super useful. Now, I know the sky's the limit. We have some products that are starting to look at AI and starting to implement, but they're just in development. And that's ultimately, I think, where AI will be really helpful. But you can use AI just for your own internal processes, which we've been doing. And it's actually been really fun for everybody, because it's a new skill, right? And people feel like, you know, now regulatory is the cool kids on the block, which, you know, is quite a change.
Can I comment on that, Chris?
Please do, John.
So I think if you talk to people in the AI world, they will say, all of them almost all of them, will say that legal and regulatory are areas that are ripe for opportunities for AI. So what does that mean? So is it possible that at some point you could develop an AI model that you feed in your reports, your biocompatibility data, your predicate information, and it writes your first draft of your 510K? Why not, right? Now, that's a little scary for all of us because it's like, well, then I'm out of a job. If you're a specialist, that's what you do. The way I'm trying to work with my team on that is this is an incredible opportunity that lets you do what you want to do, which is the strategy, the telling the story of the submission, and you let AI do the grunt work for you. And I think that is a future that is not that far distant. It's not there now, but it's not that far out to think that AI could do this. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us as RA and QA professionals to use AI to be much more efficient. Not that we're going to replace people, but people will do other things that we wish they had time to do or we had time to do, but it frees them up to do some of those more, I guess, human tasks that require a higher level of thought and analysis that, at least at this point, AI machine learning can't quite do. Maybe it will in the future, but right now, no.
I just want to add one point, which is we know the FDA is using AI tools, not extensively, but they are using them, and they're using them on a risk-based assessment approach to audits and things like that, and focusing on companies that show up differently, number of recalls per size of company, per plant, per things like that. So if we don't, as industry, stay in front of that, they're gonna pass us up, and they're gonna be doing a lot more than even we are. So I think it's really important. I learned that just in the last couple of years, that their tools are increasingly advanced. So.
All right, I'm going to ask one last question. We're going to wrap this particular session up. Because we've been on the topic of change, leading toward that. We've had the MDR, we've had all sorts of things that have hit us. I think we're on the verge of potentially one of the biggest changes in U.S. regulation that we've seen in some time. Do you have any recommendations on preparing for and implementing changes that may occur under the incoming administration? This is an open question.
That's a can of worms.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know if this administration is, who knows if the administration drives it. But it's like I said before, regulations can change overnight. Being on top of it, being aware, paying that attention to what's coming down the pipe, knowing how these things are changing, is really, I would say, the biggest driving force, no matter who's in charge in the government.
You know, if you recall, in President Trump's first administration, one of the first executive orders was for every one new regulation, you have to get rid of two. And I would fully expect something, that idea, that notion to continue. I don't know if you saw the news today, but Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was appointed the head of Health and Human Services, which is under, FDA is under that. And he's got a lot of very interesting ideas. We'll see how it plays out. But I guess the thing is as change is just a way of life, it's another administration, and things are changing in the EU. MDR is evolving. We, as RA/QA professionals, it's incumbent on us to be watching, to be looking for those changes, and if we can, to anticipate those so that our companies are ready and prepared to change, to shift in whatever direction the wind finally blows. So I think to prepare means to stay educated and aware of what's going on.
Just real quick, though, I think, you know, as industry, right, we know when our products work for patients. I think if we stay focused on the patient needs and meeting the patient needs and having safe and effective products, regardless if you have to do additional testing or not per regulation, focus on making sure they're safe and effective and they're sustainable over time, and everybody wins, regardless of who's in our government, right? So
I think those are all good. I appreciate you all letting me throw that bomb at the end. I thank you all for participating in our panel discussion. I think it was very helpful. I think we can all benefit from real-world perspectives that you've all shared. And I want to especially thank our expert panelists for participating.